Alex R. Kelly is revolutionizing hologram technology, making events and presentations unforgettable. From sci-fi dreams or real-world tech, he's bringing the future to life. Stick around. Welcome to another fantastic episode of Purpose-Driven Progress. I'm your host, Jacob Hicks, as always. And today, I am so excited for the guest that I have for you guys. So today's guest is Alex R. Kelly, a hologram innovator who started experimenting with the tech early in his collegiate career. From building a team to navigating the business side of startups, Alex has learned firsthand what it takes to turn an idea into something real. Now, he's helping people stand out at college fairs and beyond in a way they won't forget. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jacob. Great to be here.
Yeah, man, super excited to have you. So let's start at the beginning. So you have to forgive me. I'm not a huge, tech guy. I don't know about all this stuff. So in layman's terms, help me understand, what is a hologram?
Sure. So holograms, as we understand them today, like the big projections of Michael Jackson or Tupac on the stage, all these celebrities, these are a 21st century version of 16th century illusions.
Okay.
I actually gave my first guest lecture last year. It was a history lecture on the history of holograms.
Okay.
Which, best we can tell, goes back to Giambattista della Porta, a true Renaissance man from the true Renaissance. 1584, he has what would be a proto-patent almost, in the sense that he very clearly writes out how the physics of all this stuff that you're just now seeing today, but 500 years ago.
That's crazy. So it was all, I assume it was just theory back then, right? They weren't doing anything with it, were they?
First confirmed case I know about was actually in the 1600s.
Oh.
Basically, what we are doing here is these are illusions where we are taking a light source and shining the light in a very specific way and trimming out what's not supposed to be there. Think like, actually, with my ring light, you see the shadow behind me, right?
Yeah.
Holograms are basically a reverse shadow puppet. That's very reductive on the technology, but as far as the physics side, you technically don't need electricity to do that. Big bonfire and whatever the magician's tools of the day were, got it done back to them.
Fascinating. Wow. Okay, so we're talking about at least the theory that's 300-400 years old, right? So, take me back to the very beginning for holograms for you. So you first kind of started playing with the technology early in college, right? So what got you interested? How did you hear about it? What kind of started driving this thing forward for you?
It's a great question, Jacob. For me, my introduction to holograms was going to Georgia Tech, this place where people were talking about building Iron Man suits, where people were actually building tricycles that ran off of chainsaw motors. And that's the environment where I hopped on the YouTube one day and stumbled upon Michael Jackson hologram. That was actually my introduction to Michael Jackson 2. Tripping over myself, how excited I was thinking back to that time. I grew up watching Star Trek, Star Wars, animes and cartoons with the holograms. And so to see this technology in the real world, that was a jaw-dropping moment for me. That was an epiphany, and there's a lot more to it, but it was off to the races, safe to say.
I love it, man. So kind of tell me about, how are you guys utilizing this technology currently, and where do you kind of see it going?
Absolutely. So where we are using the technology, and also I'd say where our contemporaries are using this technology, is mostly for shows and private events, with some overlap. Some private events are shows, obviously. But as early as 2012, you really saw the stage shows show up. And that's in the West. In the East, in India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that's about when he started using these hologram projections for his political efforts. He literally would walk into a room built of nothing but green screens, and next thing you know, he is giving a speech to 30 different theaters across India as the hologram.
That's incredible. I didn't even realize. I mean, I feel like we've all heard of, like somebody projecting Beyonce or whoever on stage, right, for like a concert, quote unquote. But I didn't realize it was, I mean, almost, 10, 15, 13 years ago now that they were doing it that long ago. So, I mean, since it's primarily in the entertainment space right now, I mean, how accessible is this technology? I mean, to me, like, it sounds like it'd be like crazy expensive, like super high tech, difficult to use. I mean, what's the deal here?
Yeah, so like with most
Mm,
technology, there is a inverse relationship of quality of the product and price.
mhm.
And for some things, like a $5 video game might actually be good. You can get a $5 hologram with your phone, um, but it's not gonna have quite the same impact as a full price hologram display, and it's certainly not going to have the same impact as 12-foot tall Tupac Shakur alive from the dead again. That is the core problem, and that's what I believe the biggest potential I have to help in the space is. The technology is real, the technology is old, but with modern technology, it is more accessible than it has ever been.
Okay.
And if we play our cards right, we can make it where none of this is news to you. You have a hologram device, at least on your block, if not in your house.
Fascinating. Wow. Okay. So I mean, like everything, it's becoming more and more accessible to, regular guys on the street like me. So where, like, I mean, how would, somebody like me or your everyday person be utilizing a hologram?
Yeah, so there is the more obvious use cases, like
Mm,
video games is a big one people bring up.
hmm.
And actually, historically, some of the same physics has gone into arcade games that are borderline undocumented on the internet. It's funny how that
Okay.
works out. Um, but past the entertainment spaces in communications, being able to beam into a room. Did you ever see the Star Wars prequels?
I did. Yep.
Yeah, you know how in the Jedi Council, which for any of the viewers who may not have seen those movies, basically the good guys are unionized. They're a big guild. You have these Jedi, they're across the galaxy, but they're beamed in as a hologram and they're able to interact in a much more tangible way
Mm,
than, say, a regular video call. That is something that I could see around the 10-year mark
okay.
becoming truly accessible. The technology is there. You can buy it right now, but around the 10-year mark is where I think maybe you don't have to take out a second mortgage for it.
That's the goal anyway, right?
Right, right. That's where I'm trying to help.
So, tell me a little bit more specifically about you guys, like you and the team at HoloTable.
Yeah.
So, like, how have you guys been doing like the hologram thing? And I remember we were talking offline that you've made things. I mean, it sounds like a lot easier to use. So, kind of walk me through what you guys have been doing.
Yeah, so for us, the first real product we've designed,
Mhm.
we call it the HoloTable SE. It is, if you go to our website right now, you can see it. It is what I would call a medium-sized hologram display.
Okay.
So, first one I ever built back in 2017, same semester I discovered Michael Jackson, was a
Right.
tiny little thing about this big that sat on the phone. That isn't really usable for businesses or anything
Right.
like that. Not past the tchotchke. On the other hand, you have our contemporaries like Hypervision that makes giant 6-foot tall versions. They're
Mm.
about 6 feet wide, basically the size of a phone booth, but you can't actually step in it. That is very powerful. That is great technology, and it's something that needs a lot of square footage.
Yeah.
We specifically tried to build something in between. So our
Mm.
HoloTable SE, it's about 2.5 feet tall. It's
Mhm.
about 1.5 feet wide and about 1 foot deep for the different depth on our projections. And that is a niche that is being explored, but is relatively undocumented compared to these, for lack of better words, phone booth style hologram displays.
Okay. So how have you guys been using your technology up to this point?
So you mentioned, and thank you for mentioning earlier, that we made the technology much more easy to use. We
Mm.
specifically tried to build this. There's the question, where can this technology actually help people, actually help organizations? Where we really had some significant findings was in recruiting,
Mm.
whether that be for colleges at college fairs or at conventions for organizations, could be the military or career fairs.
Okay.
And for all of these, they need stuff that is very easy to move around. The average college recruiter, that's where we started this research. They may be doing 35 college fairs in 1 month. They don't have the time to set up a 200-pound phone booth. They probably don't have the vehicle for it even. It's a logistical nightmare to bring that sort of form factor into a traveling scenario like that, and that's where we've tried to build around, and part of that is it needs to be plug and play. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if they know coding. It doesn't matter if they are smarter than we are. When they have 35 events in a month, they cannot be spending 1 hour doing boot up sequences.
Yep.
So that's where we made it. You plug it in, works the first time, no input, no questions asked.
Wow. That sounds, phenomenal. Like that, because in my, sales career and everything, in my, business, professional life, I've done a lot of different, fairs and different events like that where you have a booth of some sort and you set up and you put your, your stuff at. And just having like lights or, like big banners can be a pain in the butt sometimes. So having something that you just like set on the table and literally just plug in and it's good to go sounds incredible. So do you see the college market being, the thing that you're going to continue to pursue, or do you see like other applications for this technology?
The answer is yes to both.
Mm.
I do see the college market as an angle we are pursuing. We also really have made the majority of our sales back in the private event space, like we
Mm.
were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So I see us going after both. The private events, they straight up are keeping the lights on now.
Okay.
The college angle, I think that's maybe where we can carve a niche that the other hologram companies just aren't interested or aren't able to go after.
Mm-hmm.
We also have other angles we are looking at. Like, for example, one thing that initially made HoloTable successful was that on the physics side, we used very impressive physics, but like I said, 400 years old. We very intentionally weren't breaking the mold.
Yeah.
We have a video game project, actually, that I have to keep under wraps for now,
Mhm.
but it uses the physics behind 3D projections, but for a entirely different purpose,
Interesting.
for video games.
Okay.
So we are taking this experience we have had with the holograms and shaking around all of the wires, and we're actually trying to develop a video game right now that would be playable on computers where you don't need a hologram display to run.
I love it, man. Well, because in my mind, again, I'm not a technology guy. I come from, the sales business world a lot more. And in my mind, I'm a big believer that, I can explain something to you all day long. But if I have some sort of like visual element, whether it be a PowerPoint or a printout or a handout or, a leave behind pamphlet of some sort, if I can, give you a visual, like say, hey, this is actually how these things are working, or this is how something is going to be put together, in my vision for whatever it is I'm working on, that's way, way, way more impactful. Do you see an application, for this technology in, the private sector, in the business world?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Mm.
Also, and I like where he went with that question, but I initially thought we were going a different direction. Would it be helpful to have a video demo for anybody watching the video version of this podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So I can link it too in the show notes so anybody listening can find that and see, what it is that we're actually talking about.
Awesome.
Because I think like having something like, hey, hey, I'm a, a real estate developer, just for example, saying like, hey, if I have like even an animated version of, a tour of this home or of this, apartment complex that I'm building and putting together, that makes it much more tangible in my mind. particularly if I'm, on the other end, like trying to like lend money or, investing in it or whatever the case might be. And I feel like having, this hologram technology in that kind of, of a sales setting, I feel like that would make a ton of sense. Do you feel like that would make sense?
Oh, yeah. Actually, the very first company that approached us
Hmm.
was a real estate adjacent company.
Okay.
They built custom sheds
Hmm.
for people on their land. And I really think there is a huge use case there, being able to show in real time in a fast and impressive way
Yeah.
a mock-up,
Yeah.
a minimum investment but high value prototype.
Yeah.
Uh,
So
Now
kind of
that
walk
said,
me
would you like me to go
through,
ahead and?
or
I'm
I was gonna
sorry.
say, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, Jacob. Is now a good time for me to screen share the video?
Sure.
Awesome.
Was that just rendered on the spot?
So for that specific use case, we 3D scanned her on the site in real time. The whole process from starting the 3D scan her to getting her on that display was about half an hour. Now that was
Okay.
actually mostly data speeds because a lot had to happen in the cloud. So we could probably get that down to 8 minutes with current
Okay.
tech.
So if it was like all like, hardwired, like in somebody's office before going to a presentation, it would be much quicker.
Yes, yes. If we weren't running on 4G LTE signal at a very
Right.
crowded space.
Because that was going to be my next question. Because I was curious, like, if like in that same like real estate scenario, right? Or like the shed company that you were talking about before. I mean, how much like training or software and hardware, I guess, does an individual or a company need in order to take this from zero to, finished presentation, edition?
Well, there's two answers to that.
Hmm.
If you were, let's say, Jacob, team of one, borrowed this from me for a presentation
Yeah.
and you were the one developing everything,
Hmm.
I'd say it would honestly be pretty medium difficulty. You could get it done, but there is a learning curve.
Okay.
That's where HoloTable wants to step in, though. That's where we
Okay.
believe we can be a huge help to these organizations looking to go to a convention and triple the amount of people that remember them. If we're tripling the value like that, I really think it makes sense to bring in the experts like us to do the back-end rendering because, for example, with Miss Stephanie there, all she did was stand in place in 3D. We 3D scanned her for her, and then she went off and got a martini. We did the legwork, and next thing you know, the magic's happened.
I love it. Okay, so I mean, it's reasonably doable then. So again, like let's like just like ballpark it for me. If I was like a real estate developer and I wanted a really cool, holographic presentation to, visually show what it is I'm trying to build and what I'm trying to put together for lenders or investors or whomever, like if I talk to you guys, on a Monday morning, are you able to get it done like that week or within the month? How long does it typically take?
It depends on the assets.
Okay.
So, as I understand it, as a real estate developer, you're always going to have the blueprints. You might
Hmm.
have a mock-up. You might have a 3D model. All the assets you already have will make our legwork lighter and obviously make us faster. If you do have a full 3D model or assembly of 3D models depicting the whole project
Hmm.
already for a traditional screen, oh, that's like a 1 hour job for us to convert it to the hologram.
And then I would like, again, assuming I'm the real estate investor, I would just need to have or rent, I guess, maybe I would need to have access in some form or fashion to the hollow table itself, like the hardware.
Sorry, Jacob, there's a train going by. Can you repeat that?
So you said like, so assuming that I'm the real estate developer, if I have all those assets, I just need to send that to you. And then I need to physically have access, either have purchased or have rented, I guess, have physical access in some form or fashion to the HoloTable hardware, right?
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for repeating the question. Yes. So, as long as you already have the display physically with you,
Mm.
you do not need to do any work on your end beyond turning it on. We
Okay.
already have the data signal built in. It's already set to auto download. So from our end, with the pipeline we've made, you email us the files, shared over Google Drive, doesn't matter. We do the conversion process. throw it into the back end on our website, and it will be set within 2 minutes to auto download to your hologram display.
Love it. So, I mean, it really seems, I don't know, pretty accessible, I guess. I mean, to me, like, again, hologram in my mind is like, like future stuff, like Star Trek, Star Wars, science fiction kind of stuff. But I mean, it's really not, I guess, right? I mean, it's here.
Yes, it is. The 3D projections that we think of as holograms, actually, a little bit of trivia, HoloTable was a word invented by George Lucas in 1974.
Okay.
Script writing for A New Hope. Seems like that might be the only word he didn't trademark. George, if you hear this and I'm wrong, whoopsie. But yeah, the technology is here. It's just a matter of making it where everybody can get their hands on it now.
Yeah, which, I mean, it sounds like, again, like we're kind of right on the cusp of doing exactly that. So I want to kind of take a step back here, because technology sounds incredible. It sounds super versatile to really any kind of, visualization sort of business or something. Anything that needs a further higher tech visualization, it sounds like it would be super applicable to. So I'm curious, like, what do you think has made it so effective so far, and what kind of impact have you seen?
So with next-gen depictions, whether that be virtual reality or holograms or now AI models of celebrities and the like, or your CEO if he needs it for something like that, the one thing these all have in common is that they are doing something that hasn't really been done yet in different ways. So for example, the one area, the third rail I really never want to go to with VR is single person immersion. And what do I mean by that? Have you ever used the VR headset, Jacob?
I haven't, but I've known several folks that have.
Okay. So with them, I did a lot of research. We've done work in the past with VR that we had an artist painting stuff in VR and we beamed it into the real physical world. The VR headset is truly built and designed for decades now to be the closest thing to physical that you can get for a regular person. Holograms, where this technology wins out, is a mass data emissions setup. So for shows, for conventions, when you have a group of people in the room, or for looking at weak spots in the other ones, sanitary issues. Like, let's say you're in a hospital and you want to show your patient exactly where there is a suspicious part on their liver MRI. That could be very easily done in VR. But then if the person is sick, you might have just infected that VR headset. This is a much more sanitary way, being hands-free with the virtual reality.
Interesting. I'd not, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Like, I'd not thought about it in the healthcare world. Like, that, I feel like would make a ton of sense, because, I mean, right now they're like just explaining things, or they're showing, like MRI or CAT scans or, X-rays on that. I mean, as far as I know, not that I would know, like just like on that, that light table thing that they have that's glued to the wall. So, I mean, having like the rendering of a heart or whatever that you could show to both the patient and then their loved ones in a really understandable way. I mean, I feel like that makes a ton of sense. Has anybody utilized this kind of technology in that setting yet?
I wish I knew the answer, Jacob. Here's what I do know. In 2018, when I was seriously starting to look at doing my own thing, I found a demo from an event called Lenovo Tech World, a big convention, something akin to South by Southwest.
Okay.
And with this, that they also, they might have called it HoloTable. I forget the name, but it was a hologram display. It was a giant table. It took up way more space. This is more akin to the giant phone booths we were talking about.
Yeah.
But this one specifically was four-sided. Now, I could criticize certain elements all day, but what was 100% certain is they had found this medical angle, and they were showing in real time these scans of livers and different things for the demos for communicating in this way. Honest to God, Jacob, I hope they're still out there. That seems to be the only time that this group has made a demo, was this one time in 2018.
Okay, so yeah, 7-ish years ago then. Okay, because I mean,
Right.
again, to me, that seems. I mean, again, like if we're talking about like medical stuff where it can get very, very complicated very, very quickly, some sort of tool like this that you can help visualize, hey, this is your heart, right? Here's the, the left ventricle that's having issues, or here's the one part that we're going to have to go in to fix a little bit, and helping them to understand. I mean, again, that sounds, I mean, super applicable and super helpful, I would think, being a layman that's just used to business stuff and sales stuff. So I'm curious though, because I feel like we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what do you feel like has been some of the biggest hurdles in just getting people to embrace this kind of technology?
I think the biggest hurdles with getting people to embrace this technology is, in a lot of ways, it almost feels like we're one of the very first, maybe analogous to a car phone company. Like
Okay.
with the car phones, they truly were doing something new. It
Yeah.
was making phone technology more accessible in different ways, and the market adoption was somewhat there, but they always struggled, and a lot of those companies, if they are alive, they're obviously not doing that anymore, but a lot of them also were not able to pivot and survive. And I not to get a little, not to get morbid or too morbid, but last year when I raised money with a pitch deck for investors, on the pitch deck, of course, whenever you're doing a raise, you
Mhm.
list your what makes you special, what
Yep.
makes you profitable, why you're great. And part of that is, what are the competitors and how do you stack up against them?
Mm-hmm.
A company I respect is named ARHT Media Technologies.
Okay.
They were one of those companies that make the phone booth hologram displays.
Mm.
They went under in October, and I didn't find out until January.
Oh, wow.
And it feels like having looked at the space, been a true fan for 8 years now, it feels like starting a hologram company is sort of like starting a restaurant in its first year,
Mm.
where maybe the food's delicious, maybe it's going to be gone in 2 weeks, and maybe both are true at the same time. And that, I think, is the real killer. Hologram technology is different from software, from something like AI, in the sense that we have to put big investment. Took me months to design and build this first productized model.
Yeah.
And that was time that may not have, it may have been 1 month, it may have been weeks to make the same amount of progress to have something that I could sell that was clunky but totally checked all the boxes in a software sense. I think that is the death valley for everyone, and could be the death valley for us. We're not out of it yet.
Okay. So yeah, still driving forward though, it sounds like.
Yes.
Love it, man. So kind of paint me a picture then. So what's, looking ahead to the rest of, 2025, which is still as, more or less just started, what's kind of the big vision for HoloTable, and where do you see this technology going next?
So for 2025, priority 1, inherent priority 0, stay alive. I think we're going to do that just fine. With this new product, we reduced the demo time by 90%, which means whether that's for an actual paying event or trying to do sales, we are so much faster. I have
Yeah.
so much more time in my calendar. Life is good, Jacob. So I think we've checked that box. Second box, honestly, the video games. I think we have a opportunity here to use what we've learned at HoloTable in a software space that's easier to develop, and we can actually sell to real people for a regular price. And we can do this all pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. The dream would be to have the game launched by end of year, developed, patented. With some of the physics we're doing, I believe we can get a patent. If we do that, we own a subgenre of video games,
Yeah.
and have game 1 released. That would
Man.
be the biggest thing. Beyond that, the next biggest thing would be getting back to the more traditional for us holograms. What is the place where people want this, where it makes sense? We have made this 90% more efficient. An event back in the day, we would have to charge 4 figures. Now we can charge 3 figures, but where can we do that where it's worth 3 figures to people, or ideally worth 4 figures, and we can still get away with charging 3 figures and everybody's winning? So that would be, in terms of the where am I taking the holograms, that is the next big step. And that's part of why I thought coming on this podcast would be a great opportunity for us.
Yeah, man. Well, and thanks again for coming on, Sid. We really loved having you. But for anybody out there listening that wants to learn more about you, or maybe connect or learn more about HoloTable, where can they find out more?
Absolutely. The 2 best spots to find information are going to be our website, of course, holotable.tech. Second place is going to be our LinkedIn. We will have both in the description, I understand.
Yep.
And lastly, for anyone listening that's been thinking, you brought up for architecture, you brought up for, I believe we were talking medical a good bit. If anybody in the audience has a use case where they really think holograms should go, I want them to tell me that, and we have a contest for that. So,
okay, so how do they find out more about the contest?
Yeah, so that link will also be in the description.
Yep.
This was something that was very serendipitous. I'm giving a big talk at Georgia Tech this weekend as of recording. Not exactly sure when this is coming out, but the rough title that I could fit on my letterboard is, Where Would You Hologram? So forget the budget, forget any of that. You, audience member, you have access to a hologram display. What would you want to do with it? Video games, medical, architecture? What would be the big next thing you do? And I'm going to look at all of those responses. It's going to be like a 1-minute Google form to throw in your idea and contact info. And best idea, well, where would you hologram? We'll go and do that for you together and do a free event for the best idea.
I love it, man. Well, I'll make sure to include all those links in the description, of course. And anybody listening, make sure to go and fill that out, because I mean, holograms really kind of seems like the next big wave of technology. So if you've got an idea, I mean, throw it out there to Alex, and he'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit like and subscribe, and we will see you guys next time.